Okay, guys, welcome to the Sales Architect podcast. This is episode number 3, and today I am with Jon Plumb, or JP as I call him, who is the CIO of the Rank Group. Hey, JP, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I love your Christmas tree and background lighting. Very
Thank you.
nice.
A lot of effort to get to that.
Excellent. Well, ours is coming along, but it doesn't look anywhere near as nice as that. So, I've got a lot to learn, clearly. And I think also a lot to learn from you today on the podcast because you have done so much stuff in the gaming industry primarily, but in a few other businesses as well. And I really want to learn from you. What have you learned from your experience working in that industry, but also across a whole range of different IT-based projects? So first of all, I was just going to ask you, could you give us a really brief background into who you are, what you're doing at the moment, but also what you've done over the last 10 years or so?
Sure.
And yeah, we can pick up on some of the questions from there.
Fine. So my background is predominantly in gaming, as you've mentioned. I've done bits and pieces in between, but my passion actually is in that industry: sports betting, bingo, casino, online, and venue-based gaming. Um, Predominantly, my background is in project management and project delivery, program delivery. I've done a few mergers and acquisitions along the way, predominantly Coral, Ladbrokes Coral, GVC, currently Rank. In between, I've done bits and pieces around the post office Royal Mail separation for a period of time. Spent some time at Sainsbury's. Early days started in banking. Over the last 18 months, I've been fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to operate as a CIO. So my current responsibilities cover everything from delivery right the way through to operational change and full support of the technology for the group. And that's it.
Got you. Okay. I mean that sounds like a really broad-ranging topic to be covering in your role. Also, I'm really interested to learn how that's changed this year because as we speak, we're at the back end of 2020. Obviously, everything's gone up in the air this year. So obviously, gaming industry has been online for many years, and I guess a lot of revenue comes from that for all of the companies that you've worked for. But could you just give us an overview, like what has happened this year particularly in the venue-based, brick and
Sure.
mortar-based industry, and what's happened in the online transition for the gaming industry?
So what from a customer-based point of view, what you've seen is a natural transition of your venue-based punters, customers shifting to the online gaming business. So naturally, as the venues have closed as a result of lockdown and COVID, there's been an uplift in the online business. I mean, in terms of from a technology perspective, your initial challenges when lockdown comes is the office is shut, and all of a sudden you've got a workforce needing to work from home. So you have to optimize your VPN opportunities, your Office 365, your Teams, and Microsoft Stack to make sure that it can handle that. And as lockdown occurs, you find yourself having to look at the most bizarre things were going wrong. For example, I'd get phone calls because a casino's gone dark and they'd go into the venue and it's because rats had chewed through cables. As a CIO, I've found myself having to deal with rats of all things for the first time in my career. So that presented its challenges. I think as well, the uplift in your online business results in improvements required from a performance point of view. Lots of your focus shifts almost to concentrate on improving the capability, capacity, and product that exists online. So as opposed to having to manage my focus on both venue based operations and online, I've almost been able to switch off from the venues business in its entirety and focus on the online business, which actually is arguably more exciting.
Sure. I'm sure there's a lot more innovation in the way that the online business has evolved over the last couple of years and probably continues to now that people are transitioning ever more online.
Yeah,
And maybe the
interesting.
venues won't reopen as well, right? That's a feasible issue with a lot of the industry.
Funnily enough, we've opened up our casinos today, but I think the other element that that's not necessarily done so well is the omnichannel piece, the opportunity around omni, particularly when you're dealing with a business that's been around for a number of years. You've got this venue customer base, an online customer base, venue technology, online technology, which isn't actually tied together particularly well. A data stack that that isn't necessarily optimized, and it's got loads of legacy information, incorrect customer information, old data that you need to try and turn into something valuable to be able to market and cross-pollinate and get your customers onto both platforms and operate. A venues customer who traditionally will walk into a casino, sit at a roulette table, how do you then turn that customer into somebody who will sit in front of their laptop or their phone at home instead? And how do you make sure that they come to you and not to a competitor? So
that's a good question that I'd like to fire straight back at you. So how have you gone around, or how is the industry currently going around that transition of someone that used to go in brick and mortar and now you're trying to get them to go online? Is it a combination of different campaign strategies around marketing? Is there something else that you can do that's a bit more pull focused?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the demographic, and you have to look at what sort of customer will be interested in what product. So if you look at your venue customer who's interested in table games, the best place to point them at is the live casino online product, which is they can sit there and look at somebody spinning a wheel and putting the ball down. And then obviously you've got your other punters that will go in there and they'll sit at the slot machines. So your opportunity there is to push them to the online slots business. In order to do that, you need to be able to have a strong data on that customer, be able to manipulate that data and push the right marketing to them, which has presented challenges. And obviously you've got some venues customers who are also online customers already, so you don't want to be wasting your effort on a customer who you've identified in a venues database who's already there in your digital one, and because they're two separate databases and they're not merged properly, you've got a duplication potentially that needs to be managed. The way we've started to do that and the way we try to manage that is building a single customer view, which again presents more challenges because you've then got a legacy venue database with customer details in there, which are managed and built into a data structure which is different to the online one. So you've then got to spend a load of effort mapping the customers between the two. So you kind of unpick one problem and you find another one, and then how do you push that into a suitable CRM tool and get the right marketing offer out to that customer and communicate them in the right way whilst managing GDPR, whilst managing customer preferences, making sure that they've asked that you're okay to market to them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So presumably, to go a little bit more technical then, so you say you've got your kind of legacy data sets from long-standing customers of brick and mortar, and then you might have a slightly new and differently organized data set that sits in a containerized system somewhere else for your online customers. What are you doing, and how is the industry currently evolving to build one CRM system that can actually manage an entire data set in that way without duplication and data issues?
Yeah, the only way to do it is to create a single customer view, to create a database that has a master record, your golden customer record. So you need to map the fields across all the databases, ingest that data into a single database and create a golden ticket customer, a golden customer record that literally holds all the relevant information for that customer, whether they are venues, customer, interactive, digital, or another. That's the way forward, right? And then you build data models that push into a CRM tool. I mean, I've worked in big companies, right? So we try to the ones I've tend to use are best in breed. So it will be Adobe, it will be Optimove and tools like that, as opposed to the free stuff. But again, making best use of tools like that is challenging itself, because you've got to have the right people to be able to build the right models and build the platform in a way that can be used effectively and most cost effectively.
Sure. Presumably, to build out those models, there's going to be dozens, if not more, data fields that are based on their spending habits, their time spent in certain games, their time spent with certain types of activities. does that, is that a unique challenge? I mean, I haven't worked in gaming myself, but is that a unique challenge to the gaming industry, or can you see
Okay.
parallels with others as well?
Yeah, I suspect it's the same in lots of industries that offer a retail and a digital product set. So I don't think it's unique in that sense, and it doesn't need. It's not overly complicated. You've just got to make sure you've mapped the data in the right way to be able to deliver the best CRM tool. But once you build that single customer view, it goes way beyond marketing and CRM. It can be used for all sorts of things. We have a big focus at the moment on safer gambling, protecting the consumer, making sure that they're gambling within their means and betting within their means, and that's a huge focus for us as well at the moment. So you take your single customer view, and not only is it valuable from a marketing point of view, the value of it extends into other things. And just being able to make sure that a customer's all right and they're not in trouble in that. So you'll set a bunch of triggers when a customer, let's say they spend £500 and or lose £500, it sets a trigger so that we can then reach out to that customer, ask them if they're all right, check to make sure that they're financially viable and can afford to lose that kind of money. Affordability is really important at the moment in the industry. It's
Sure,
becoming
sure.
increasingly difficult to manage.
Yeah, I mean that kind of decision path process of how you push someone into a certain sequence of activity is obviously something that my audience, smaller business leaders, are using in their email marketing campaigns or their multi-channel marketing campaigns to say, send a three email sequence to a certain customer, and if they respond at any point, depending on their response, you kick them into a different sequence that then pushes them on and to do take some other kind of action or
Various
to follow
acquisition and opportunities to reel them into down the right customer journey, I guess, is what you're trying to achieve.
And is that something that's just ever evolving, or do you feel like there's points in time where you kind of crack the code on that and you sit still with it for 6 months and then reassess later, or is it just a continuously evolving?
It's continuously evolving, right? I think you can reach a point where you create some key customer journeys which are optimized and optimal and do serve a purpose, and they largely don't change. But actually, as you evolve your product and your business, you're going to want to push customers into new areas. Get them looking at sportsbook, or get them looking at a new game or a new product. Um, you know, so I don't think it ever stops. I think those models will always have to evolve and always have to be built upon. I think the key is making sure that you've got the right core data set underlying it all to make sure you've got the right information going into those models. That's the key.
Spoken like a CIO.
Yeah.
I say presumably the role of a CIO, I mean, obviously in your industry, but in every industry at the moment, is critical, right? As everything moves online and data, comprehensiveness of data and accuracy of data becomes ever more important.
Yeah, I
What
think the
what do
role of
you?
CIO is changing. Sorry, I think the role of a CIO is changing. Actually, the traditional CIO CTO role was somebody who was technically strong. They understand technology. They understand the movement in the market when it came to technology. They were architects. Their background was coders. As coders, gave them that benefit. They knew how to build a website. The CIO of now and the future is somebody who actually is focused on the business, understands commercially what's required from a business point of view, can actually work and almost be embedded in the business to help them evolve the product and evolves the technology to deliver specific business requirements. It's not about and actually be able to manage people who can do that. I have architects, I have security architects, I have the people that have got the technical nous to turn a vision into something real. My job is to make sure I'm that link between the business and those techies. It's a different role, I think now. It feels like one.
So if you could go back in time, then, I mean, I don't know if you've always imagined yourself as becoming a CIO, CTO at some point in your career, but if you could go back to your 21-year-old self and give, JP of 21 a really solid piece of advice that would help you get to where you are today, or maybe avoid something that prevented you from getting there as quickly as you might have done otherwise, what would that golden piece of advice be?
That's a good question. My background is delivery, and I think the key is transparency. When you're delivering something for a business or working with multiple stakeholders or delivering to an exec or a board or a program manager, whoever it is, be completely transparent about where you are. Don't try to falsify information, think that you're doing better than you are. People respect you more for being straight and transparent. Let's take a risk register or an issue log or the status of your project. You can walk into a board meeting and you can call it green, amber, or red. Don't walk in there and call it green if it isn't. Tell them it's red. They're there to help you and support you. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Be transparent and honest at any point in your career about where things are as you're delivering them.
Sure. And what have you found to be some of, obviously, being transparent in general as a mantra, but have you found any particular methods or techniques to get across that point of view, even when it's a negative, even when it is a red? What's the best way to communicate with people that kind of negativity in a positive light, and to get their buy-in and to move forward in a positive direction off the back of that?
Yeah. My advice would be, don't go to them with a problem. Yes, inform that there is something wrong, go to them with a solution attached to it. So, sit in front of them and say, right, we've got a problem with, it's going to take an extra 2 months. We're going to manage this by X and Y, whatever it may be. So yeah, don't walk in and say you've got a problem. People don't want to hear problems. They don't want to be given a problem for them to have to fix themselves, particularly when you're walking into a board with a CEO or a member of the exec. They want to be given the straight truth of where things are, but also feel confident that the person telling them that is in control and can manage it and can put it right again.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's solid advice for the listeners out there. Hear what JP's saying. That's very solid advice. So what do you think was the best? Presumably, you haven't always got that right. So what do you think was the best mistake that you ever made? Maybe you got something wrong, but actually you learnt from that experience, so that you can now have the benefit of telling me and everyone else that being transparent is always the right thing to do. Can you give an example of a mistake that you've learned from?
Yeah, I mean, I've been delivering projects for a long time now, and I've completely lost count of the amount of projects that I've delivered. I think on a number of occasions over the years. I think if I go back to my early days as a project manager, I was tasked with delivering new roulette screens into a casino. So this is, I don't know if you've spent much time at a roulette machine, but they have a lot of hot numbers, cold numbers, last numbers hit on the thing, stuff like that. And I went into it as a naive young project manager, not really knowing how to deliver a project. Let's say I'd done a Prince 2, but practically not done it. And I went in for funding to get it approved. Literally underestimated the cost of this project by probably £200,000-300,000 underestimated it by, and tried to hide the cost by scrimping and saving areas that, buying cheaper screens or cutting the development, but not necessarily communicating it properly, resulted in an absolutely crap product being pushed out as a proof of concept. You report this upwards on a weekly basis to the program manager or whatever it is, that it's in good shape. And all of a sudden, you get to the point where you completely prove a concept. What you delivered is a load of rubbish, and you've then got to go and ask for more money. And people don't appreciate that, particularly when you've reported all the way along that things are in good shape. To then reach a point in time where, bang, your project's failed and you need another £200,000-300,000. No one appreciates that.
Yeah. And I guess that transparency throughout the course of a project means that there's no surprises towards the back end. And therefore, if looking back now, I'm sure that if you'd assessed that as you were going through and requested incremental funding increases throughout the project, then you still would have got to the ultimate end goal, and it wouldn't have been as much of a pill to swallow, right?
And beyond that, the pressure and stress you put on yourself in that scenario for a period of weeks, when actually you could have reached to somebody at the next level up who could have just helped you and shared the burden, or helped you through it, rather than trying to carry it on your own shoulders. It's not good for your own mental health. It's not. It eats away at you, and you struggle. You find yourself having sleepless nights over it, and that's not healthy.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's a really big topic at the moment. I'm going to be doing a webinar next week, and one of the kind of topic areas is going to be around how to manage stress and mental health, and obviously there's positive and negative effects of working from home. But we've seen over the course of this year, people have had issues when it comes to isolation at home, not being able to connect properly with their colleagues and work remotely in as efficient a fashion as they do when they're sat on the opposite desk to those people. Do you have any, or have you guys deployed any kind of system solutions that have helped with that collaboration, to reduce the blockers there to enable people to communicate better at home?
I mean, look, things like in a working from home environment, Microsoft Teams has been invaluable, certainly for this company. You know, Skype, whatever it is that you want to use, video conferences have been critical. I think regular communication from the exec downwards as well gives people comfort and confidence and visibility about what's going on. Um, I mean, we opened our offices back up as soon as the government allowed us to and said it was safe to do so, obviously putting all the COVID measures in place and gave people the choice and the opportunity. Look, if you want to get out of your house and you want to come and work in the office, we will create, and there is a safe environment for you to do so. You know, come and spend some time in a building with other people. Don't suffer in silence and sit at home in front of a screen all day. So we've given people the option, right?
And and beyond that, is there any, either that you've deployed or that you've heard of, any technology solutions that are helping people with mental health or stress that you would recommend that they sign up to, or that they ask their manager to sign the business up for?
It's a good question. I mean, we use a third party company who provide mental health support. It's a phone number for somebody to ring, which is anonymous, that they can use to talk to somebody who will help them, who is a professional. You know, and offer yourself, right? Offer, you know, on my door or phone is always available for anybody that needs my help. Hence why I answered your call for this podcast. You know, I think just allowing people to know that you're there for them, or that they've got avenues to go down in the event that they need help, it is all that you can do as a leader in a company. You know, there's a responsibility on an individual to look after themselves, of course, but as long as there are channels that you provide to your people or to individuals that they can use if they need it as a last resort or whatever it may be, then that's the most you can do, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, was working in my previous company. We were doing some research, and it came up that we were talking about remote working, and it came up that mental health and stress were obviously massive issues with working from home. And all of the senior leaders that I spoke to said exactly the same. It's about your availability as a manager and your open-mindedness to be able to adopt and deploy new tools if, a member of staff recommends or has found a piece of technology that really helps for them, and it's
Yeah.
relatively low cost, or it's easy to deploy, quick learning curve. Why not do those kind of things to
The
help
other
people?
thing, online training courses. I don't know. I didn't want to reference any like things like Pluralsight is something that we deployed to offer people online training so that they continue to develop themselves as well. It's not
Mm.
just about mental health; it's about continued development. You know,
Yeah.
and there are great online ways that you can do that and offer that to your staff without having to spend huge amounts of money. You know, buy 50 licenses from Pluralsight and get it rotating around your teams. Give them the opportunity to go on courses, feel like they're bettering themselves while sitting at home.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a tool that I've partnered up with recently called We Thrive, and they basically marry up the mental health and support and issues around that with the learning management solution side, and they bring all of that together. So it's about L&D, and it's also about the mental health at the same time. And it's a kind of rounded solution that smaller businesses can use to deploy with their staff, and it gives feedback to the line manager of the individual as an
Mm.
individual, but also on aggregate across the team, so that they can see, blind spots or weak spots in people's comfort level with what's going on at the moment, but also at an aggregated level they can understand the health
Yeah,
measured by multiple KPIs of their team.
that's
So
a good
yeah,
idea.
highly recommend taking a look into those things. Okay, so switching back to the kind of CIO conversation, because I'm very aware that I don't get to speak to a CIO very often, so I'd love to ask you some questions around that. Um, in your line of work, now that you're kind of at the top of the game in the industry and the role that you do, what are three questions that people commonly ask you, or three problems that people commonly come to you with, and what are the answers that you give to those questions?
Right. I mean, generally, it's about change and evolving, right? So people tend to come to me because they want change delivered in technology. They want some sort of improvement. So it's generally, how long will it take? How much is it going to cost me? Uh, and what's the best solution to my problem, right? It's the obvious delivery questions that pop up, the big three, right? I think, in terms of response, how much is it going to cost? It's give us some time to do the scope, give us your requirements. What exactly is it that you want? You're a consumer. You're going to be a consumer of a product that I'm going to deliver for you, or a technology I'm going to deliver. Be specific about what you want. What are the customer journeys? What are your employee journeys? Go away and have a proper think about what it is that you need, so that we don't get to a point 6 months down the line, or however long it is, where we've delivered something that you don't actually want. And that happens a lot, right? Because the business will come up with an idea that's vague. The tech team will interpret that in a certain way. They'll go off and deliver something, and it's not fit for purpose. It happens all the
Sure.
time. So I think upfront analysis, requirements gathering, and engagement with the stakeholders, particularly the business stakeholders, is key to satisfying that. Building a plan around delivering it, going back with a cost, scope, time that's actually built on some requirements and analysis that stack up.
So is there a particular methodology or framework that you have used in the past, or that you use currently, to gather those requirements in the right way, in a comprehensive way?
So it's a mixed bag, right? And I can throw a load of buzzwords at you if you want.
Go for it.
We can talk about waterfall delivery. We can talk about agile delivery. Everyone wants a blend of both, right? The traditional waterfall methodology actually works quite well in a venues business, because you're having to deploy a single technology solution to multiple places, right? Delivering change of that nature tends to be very expensive. Let's take an example where we'd want to roll out an iPad food ordering solution to all of the venues. You wouldn't do that iteratively in an agile way. You may do a proof of concept, but actually, when you deploy that to 50 venues, or 100 venues, or 1,000, you want to get to a minimum viable product before you send it out. So waterfall tends to be a better route for delivery. Yes, you can build agile development in the middle of it, but ultimately the project you deliver will be, you've got a bunch of requirements with a minimum viable product. You've got a development phase. You've got a testing phase, because you need to get that right. And then you've got a deployment model. Whereas online business, a website, Christ, you can be deploying to a website every day if you want little snippets of change. So actually, your methodology is completely different for a website build. Yes, if it's a brand new website, you'll have the same principles as waterfall, obviously, more often than not. Whereas once you've got an established website that just needs to evolve, you want your team being agile. You want the product owners working with the developers and sitting with the testers to make sure that you've got that kind of workflow working nicely, and change hitting the site every day if you can. So it's a difficult question to answer. There's no typical methodology. It just depends on what you're delivering for who.
Sure. I mean, that's as good an answer as any, right? Because there isn't one size fits all. There isn't a particular methodology that can be deployed in all scenarios, all instances. So, in your position as the kind of technology advisor internally within an enterprise business, if you were to give advice to a young project manager that's got ambitions to go far in their career, what would you say to them in terms of how to communicate with a CIO type figure, or with a technology director, IT director within a business, so that they can have the most chance of success?
I think one of the key things is to get buy-in and support from the people working on your project. If you need business analysts, developers, testers, a project manager should have a great relationship with anybody involved in his project. So once that's established, you have a nicely running and oiled machine. In terms of reporting upwards, program manager, an IT director, or a CIO will be getting hundreds of updates every day. So there needs to be consistency with that. So project managers should ensure that there is a structure. In fact, it's a responsibility of the function, really, a project function, to make sure that there is a consistent, concise, clear way of delivering a message upwards. If there are 20 projects to update, make sure the report is the same for all of them. So that as a CIO, I can see that I can flick across, because I haven't got time to read all of the detail. I can flick across, pull out the key bits that matter, a red flag here or a risk there or whatever it is, but be able to do it consistently with all of them, so that as a CIO or a tech leader, you can do sweeps across projects as opposed to having to get into the detail. So be clear, concise, and actually only escalate things that you absolutely can't manage yourself and you need help with. There you go.
Got you. Yeah, consistency is key, right? If you're expecting to get the time, very limited time, of someone that is overseeing so much at once, really, if you want to get their attention, it has to be highlighted and it has to be consistent with the way that they would expect to receive that information.
And rightly so. Every project manager's project is the most important project in the world to them, and that's how it should be. But what you've got to realize is that that's not the most important project to the CIO, because he's probably got 20 projects that matter and need delivering in a different way, or to a different stakeholders that he's trying to support. And it's not because he doesn't value you or your project; he doesn't think any less of it. It's just that there's a much bigger piece of the puzzle to look at.
Sure, but is it also right to say that even a project that ranks maybe lower on the priority list of someone like yourself can actually end up being bumped up the list by good project management practices of the owner of that project?
I think that's true, because generally, in order to deliver a project, there's got to, certainly at the moment, whilst you're in cash management mode and money is tight, it's about revenue generation. So if you've got a strong project manager who can bring forward a delivery date, let's say by 2 months, to start generating revenue 2 months sooner than was predicted, bang, you're instantly more important to me. So yes, that's absolutely the case.
Nice, that's good advice for young PMs out there listening in. Okay, so we're coming to a close, but there's a few more questions that I wanted to ask. So you mentioned obviously you're overlooking so many projects at once, and obviously those are always changing, and on a rolling period you're going to be
trying to keep the lights on as well and everything.
Yeah, exactly, as well as all of the technical challenges and the rats chewing through the cables. So what's the kind of number one struggle for you right now in your job, or if you can't answer that for kind of PR reasons, in the industry as a whole right now, what do you think is the kind of number one priority for CIO profile people?
Crikey. I think it's adapting the strategy to fall in line with what's happening with the world we're living in right now with regards to COVID. In the last 6, 9, 12 months, my strategy 12 months ago is completely different to what it is today and what the business is focused on and targeting over the next 12 months. The key to a strong technology function is adapting to the changing environment and changing needs of the business. The change in our environment has been unprecedented in the last 12 months. Therefore, I have to adapt my technology plan to cater for that, getting customers safely back into our venues. What technologies can I use to help drive our customers back in, get our customers to be able to come back and enjoy our venues again? Mecca as a bingo off venue actually was a lifeline to a lot of people, particularly older generations, because it was their day out. It was their trip to see their friends or whatever it was. These people have been stuck at home and their mental health must be suffering as a result, because they've lost their lifelines in a lot of cases. I'm not exaggerating, I don't think. Therefore, how can I, over the next 6 months, create a technology capability and support the business to get these people back to living a semi-normal life?
Obviously there's different demographics, and it's not like you're going to be able to get an 80-year-old lady to strap on a VR headset and start doing some kind of interactive online gambling, virtual gambling hall. But what kind of technologies have you got earmarked over the next, say, 5 years that you think are really going to improve the gaming industry?
Oh, that's a good question. From a venue's point of view, the initiatives that we're trying to look at is the omnichannel experience. So give customers the opportunity to go into venue, but use their handheld devices to game, but game in the venue and in that environment, but also be able to interact with people online at the same time. To try and make the experience fluid and all encompassing so that they can operate and they can be in a venue or they can be at home but still have the same experiences no matter where they are. And I think actually, if you imagine a world of COVID and these sort of restrictions long term, actually people walking into a venue and using their device actually is quite a safe way to do it because it's only them touching it, right? Particularly in bingo, right? It's more difficult in casinos, but bingo certainly.
Sure.
So it's about personalisation is going to be the key for the next few years for us, and focusing on that.
And how strong? I mean, AR and VR. I mentioned it already. Are big areas of opportunity for retail, for example, and many other industries. Do you see a space for kind of AR, augmented reality, in terms of being able to put your camera up to the venue and have augmented items, actions, winnable prizes or something?
But is it still there yet, really, for something like that? I mean, I think you go to these events and you see people coming up with these ideas for virtual reality casinos and whatever it may be, and they're all concepts. But does the consumer actually want that? You can invest millions in this sort of stack, and actually, what does that convert into revenue? When you've got, I don't think this industry is certainly not ready for that in the next 5 years. Not until things like that become the norm for society.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's even now VR in PC gaming, for example, has been around for ages, and even now it's still seen as gimmicky, and that's in the industry. Computer gaming, which is the closest to that type of technology, is still seen as a gimmick. So deploying it into
headset for my PlayStation that I think I've used, I can count times on my hand, and I've had it for 4 years.
Yeah. I used a VR headset once when I worked back at Intel, and that's like 8 or 9 years ago now. And all I can remember from it, and granted it's come a long way since then, but all I can remember from it is how horrendously pixelated it seemed. I think the display was like 720p in each eye, which is obviously horrendous when it's like that close to your face.
Like real life, and there never will be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So the final question I like to round off with is, what are your kind of major professional influences in terms of what do you read, what do you watch, what do you listen to, that kind of gives you fresh ideas for how to approach your job and keeps you hot on the pulse of what's going on?
Question. I think there are certain companies that offer a lot of insight into what's good and what's not, where the market's going, where technology's going. Prime example being someone like Gartner, who you can, yes, it costs a load of money to utilize their services, but by far it's one of the most valuable for a techie services to make use of. But actually, a lot of stuff's readily available on the market. You can just Google something you want to know, and it becomes available. LinkedIn is a useful tool, engaging with like-minded people, and there's lots of forums and IT chat rooms and all this sort of stuff, which you need to be selective of because some of it's just people trying to sell you stuff. But ultimately, I think, they're the kind of things, they're the channels I use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of a few really good Slack groups, for example, and that seems to be like the forum of choice at the moment.
It's trendy now, isn't it? All of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, today, so people listening to this in the future when it's all gone bust, but today, Salesforce bought Slack for $28 billion. I was actually, just before we got on the call, I was having a look. Unless you know already, what do you think Slack's annual revenue is?
Oh, crikey. I should know this. I'm sure it was up in the press a while ago. I'm not sure.
It's not a lot. It's like less than 500 million. So their multiplier is huge. So got a
They need
50x
to
multiplier.
sell some licenses, don't they, to recover that cost?
Well, their gross profit's 86%. So that's sorry, gross margin is 86%. That's why I guess they're a hot topic, because if anything, any business that's that profitable is and that scalable, deployable in so many businesses is just
Yeah, my devlot love it as well. My techies, that's their go-to tool, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that work then if you've got, because you were saying that a lot of your commercial and kind of back office organization are using Teams, and then you've got your techies using Slack, like how do you manage the integration of those two, or do you keep them fairly separate?
Kept separate. It's kept separate. Leave the techies having the techie chats on Slack, and the rest of the organisation will stick to Teams. That's the current thinking.
Fair enough. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much, JP. Really enjoyed talking to you. I mean, well, today is the first day that we are officially allowed outside again, so maybe we'll catch up for a beer sometime soon as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll speak to you again soon, and thanks very much for coming on the podcast. Just a quick word for the audience: please like, comment, share. Follow JP as well on LinkedIn if you like, and you can follow me, the Sales Architect, and I'll be publishing another one of these podcast videos in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you very much. Bye bye.